All right, good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, the 4th of Tammuz. Thank you all for joining. I'm filling in once again for Rabbi Buket. He should be back tomorrow with all of you. So we're continuing in Parshas Chukas, talking about what happens when someone becomes Tameh, and then later on we're going to continue with the Jewish people in the desert and what happens with Miriam's passing. So let's continue on chapter 19. V'lokach ezei v'tavo b'mayim ishtar v'hiza al ha'oil v'al kol ha'kelim v'al nefashes asher hayu sham v'al hanegea be'etzem oy b'cholol oy b'meis oy b'kover. So a ritually clean person, you should take this hyssop and dip it into the water and sprinkle it on the tent and all the vessels and all the people who were in it, and anyone who touched the chalal, the bone, or a slain person, or a corpse, or a grave, or any of that stuff. V'hiza tar alatame, and the ritually clean person sprinkles it on the unclean person. V'yom hashlishi on the third and seventh day. And he should wash his clothes and bathe in water, and he should become ritually clean that evening. Next verse number 20. If someone becomes unclean, does not clean himself, he becomes cut off from the Jewish people, because he has defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The sprinkling waters were not sprinkled upon him, and he is unclean. Verse number 21. And this shall be a perpetual statute. And the one who sprinkles the sprinkling water shall wash his clothes. The one who touches the sprinkling water shall be unclean until evening. So now let's look at this. Let's look at Rashi. And the one who sprinkles the sprinkling water. We're going to talk about the two people here. The people who sprinkle the water and the people who touch the sprinkling water. A rabbi said that the one who sprinkles is actually ritually clean. But this teaches us that the one who carries the purifying waters becomes defiled with a stringent uncleanliness. For even the clothes he is wearing are contaminated. Unlike the one who merely touches the sprinkling water, which he doesn't have this problem of his clothes. The one who touches shall be unclean, but he is not required to wash his clothes. Both Rashis basically pointing out the same idea. The person who touches the sprinkling water, he doesn't have to wash his clothes, but the one who actually does the sprinkling has to wash his clothes, becomes a higher level of tameh. V'chol asher yiga b'yatama yitme v'nefesh hanegeas titma ad ha'arev. Whatever the unclean one touches becomes unclean. So when you become tameh, you have to be careful about where you are and what you're doing, because what you handle, what you touch, has an effect. What does it mean, v'chol? And again, whatever the unclean one touches, this unclean one who was defiled by a corpse touches, that's what becomes unclean. Okay, shall be unclean until evening. From here we derive that a corpse is the supreme source of contamination. That's the avois hatuma, as it's called. It's the highest level of tuma. And v'hanagea boy av tuma umetame adam, and somebody who touches an av tuma, somebody who touches a primary tuma, such as a corpse, will go on defile other people through contact. So you have to be very careful when you touch an av tuma. Okay. All right, let's go to chapter 20. Verse 1, we are now continuing in the story of the travels of the Yidden in the desert, the Jewish people in the desert. So, Vayavu bnei Yisrael kol ha'eda midbar Tzin b'chodesh harishon v'yeshev ha'am b'kodesh v'tamas sham Miriam v'tikaver sham. The children, the bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, traveled and they arrived in Midbar Tzin, in the desert of Tzin. It was in the first month, and they settled in the city of Kadesh. Miriam died there and she was buried there. Kol ha'eda, it says the entire congregation of the children of Israel. Rashi says the complete congregation, for the ones destined to die in the desert had already died, and these were assigned for life. Very interesting. Thomas saw Miriam. Miriam died there. Why is the passage related to Miriam's death? Written right next to the red heifer. We were just talking about being tamei, and the way to become tahar, you need to have the para aduma, the red heifer. Why are we going straight from one story to the next? To teach you that just as sacrifices bring atonement, so the death of the righteous secure atonement. Wow. But Tamasha Miriam died there. Another point that Rashi wants to say on these words, she too died through a kiss from God's mouth rather than by the angel of death. So then why does it not say by God's mouth, like it says by Moshe? Because it's not respectful to speak of Hashem in such a way. Concerning Aaron, it does say by God's mouth, these are the journeys. But also Miriam was not taken by the Malach Hambaves. She was not taken by the angel of death, but rather by Hashem himself. Verse number 2. There was no water, so they assembled against Moshe and Aaron. What Rashi says, it had no water. From here we learn that all 40 years they had the well in Miriam's merit. The water was for Miriam. As soon as Miriam passed away, the water no more was giving. Vayarav ha'am im Moshe vayemru leimer v'lu gavanu giva achenu lifnei Hashem. The people argued with Moshe and they said, if only we had died with the death of our brothers before Hashem. If only we had died, we wish that we had died. With the death of our brothers, from plague. This teaches us that the death from thirst is more dreadful than death by plague, because they wished to have died by plague rather than die from thirst. Verse number 4. Why have you brought us, the congregation of Hashem, to this desert so that we and our livestock should die here? Why did you take us out of Egypt to bring us to this terrible place? It is not a place for seeds or for fig trees, grapevines, or pomegranate trees, and there's no water to drink. Verse number 6, Moshe and Aaron moved away from the assembly, El Pesach, El Moed, to the entrance of the tent of meeting. When you have a problem, this is what you do. You go to the entrance of the tent of meeting, Vayiflu al Pneim, and they fell on their faces, Vayer Chvoid Avaya, Chvoid Hashem Alehem, and the glory of Hashem appeared to them. We'll continue Chumash tomorrow, continue what happened with this story of the Jewish people complaining about the water. All right, let's go to Tanya. We're continuing now in Shar Yichud V'Amunah. We're finishing the chapter 11, and we were talking about the letters that God used to create the world and how everything is created with these letters, and that's the life source of these letters. Let's dive in more about these letters. In truth, however, the letters, the letters from Hashem, or supernal letters of speech, they are much higher than wisdom and intellect. By us, intellect is generally higher than letters, because letters are a tzimtzum. They're constricting, right? You have lots and lots of thoughts. You can only speak a certain amount. You can only articulate yourself, your thoughts, to a certain degree, right? But in your mind, it is much more vast. But actually, that's not how it works. By supernal letters transcend man's intellect and wisdom. Actually, man's, when I say man, I mean humanity's wisdom and intellect was created with words. So obviously the words of Hashem, it actually was created with the words Nasa Adam B'Tzalmenu. God, let us make man in our image. Those words created Adam into Baal Chachma v'Seichel. So it must be higher than Chachma and Seichel. Ayafilu behevel ha'elyon lavad. Even just the divine breath is higher than man's intellect and wisdom, because breath, it says vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. He breathed into Adam's nostrils a soul of life. So we see that the breath and the oisios and the letters of Hashem are higher than humans' intellect and wisdom. V'im kain hadibar v'havel elyon hu makar hachachma v'aseichel shabnishmas adam arishain. So it follows that the dibur, the speech and the breath of the heavenly breath and speech, is the source of our seichel and our chachma. Of Adam, because that's what was used to give it to Adam Arishan, which actually Adam Arishan hakelelas kolon nishmas hatzadikim. He was the first soul that includes the souls of all the tzadikim, sheim gedolim malachei asharis, which are even greater than the malachei asharis, the ministering angels. V'hainu lefisha oisies hadibar yisparich him bechinas hamshachas koiches v'chayis mimidos of yisparich. So why are these letters and breath, why are they so high? Because they are one with Hashem. They come from something that is, come from the midosai shal yisparich, from the emotive attributes of Hashem. And these emotive attributes of Hashem, hamyuchadais b'mahusai va'atzmusai betachlus hayichud. They are united with Hashem's essence and being in perfect unity. It's infinitely higher than the level of wisdom in created beings. From our point of view, they're not letters denoting a lower level. For us, it's not ICAs, it's not a lower level, it's actually much higher than we are, because it's creating us. What is it referring to? ICAs? How does it have the word letters? That's in reference. That's in relation to Hashem himself. These are expressions of letters. Let's read it in this gray box over here. The name letters, which signifies that they are lower than wisdom and intellect, is not applied to them in relation to created beings. For as explained earlier, they are far superior to created wisdom and intellect. Rather, this term is applied to them relative to God's emotive attributes, in as much as they are only letters, revelations of these attributes. So when we call them Isis, these things that are these forces, these energies from Hashem that are creating things, even our own intellect, creating our own intellect, these are only letters which denotes a lower level. They're only letters relative to Hashem himself. But to us, they're much higher. There are 22 kinds of, just like the amount of letters in the Hebrew alphabet, there are 22 different kinds of hamshachos, of it says over here, effluences of life force and power different types of ways that the letters come down and give keiches, and give chayos, and give life source and power. So there are shebehem nivru kol ha'olamos elyonim v'tachtenim v'chol ha'brim shebeseicham. And these 22 letters or life forces, they're what created all the higher and lower worlds and everything that's inside them. Shekach Allah b'rtzoynei v'chachmasa yisbarach levroya olam b'chaf beis mini hamshachas shenis dafka v'loi pachos v'loi yoser. Because it came from Hashem's will to create the world with these 22 utterances, or you want to say letters, and not more and not less. And these are the 22 letters which are fixed in the mouth and tongue, that we learned in Sefer Yetzirah. And actually, if you look at the brackets, their written shape, the shape of these letters, that indicates how the form of their flow. So actually the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph, Beis, how they look also has an effect on how they are hamshachas, how they are coming down, how they flow and manifest in this world. Shagam oisies hadibur v'machshava shebenefesh ha'adam hem hamshachas ma'aseicha v'amidas shebenefesh mimahusan v'atzmusan kama yisparach b'makom achar. Because even for the letters of speech and thought in the human soul are also coming, just like by a human, letters of the thought and speech come from our intellect and our emotive attributes. That's also by Hashem. These come from the essence of Hashem. They come from the source, from the like we said, in Kate's is so much higher than our intellect and our speech and our thought, but this comes from the source of Hashem. These 22 letters, oisios hakvuyim, that are fixed in our mouth and tongue. These are the 22 oisios that create the world and that everything is made up of. Today we did it in a record 19 minutes. Everyone have a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed. And I look forward, Rabbi Bookit looks forward to seeing you tomorrow in Mirz Hashem and learning with all of you. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
You have a wonderful day. Thank you. What a smile.